Hello, hello. All right, let me get the group on here. Okay, cool. We are good. We are good. I'm going to get the group on here, and then we should be good to go. All right. How's everybody been? You guys been doing good? Hopefully, you've been doing good. It's Friday. Anybody doing anything fun this weekend? Make sure, hi group. All right, so make sure you guys post a 1 below if it's your first through third time catching me live. Post a 2 below if you're an oldie but goodie, okay? So I have the group on here. I have the page on here. Everything's kind of crazy, but we're going to get through this, right? All right, so, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Raven Woods. I'm the CEO and founder of Autism Mama Rocks the IEP, and I help parents gain the knowledge and the confidence to become the CEO of their IEP meeting. So with that said, I know it's a Friday night. I know I'm not going to get lots of you, and that's okay, but I wanted to go live with this because I found it really interesting. It was interesting. It was an interesting read, let's just put it that way. So I'm excited to tell you about it. All right, so hello, Jessica. How are you? How are you doing? All right, so this is the deal with that. Well, let's let people hop on real quick. So I want to give them a chance to do that. And hello. All right, who filled out their or posted their picture for Picture Friday on the group today? Anybody? Did you guys do that? Jessica, did you post a picture? Hopefully you did, of your cutie. All right, so we're just going to go ahead and get started because it is so nice out and nobody is available. All right, so with that said, here is the deal, okay? So I am really excited to talk about this, me and reading. And it was interesting because it is research, all right? So I thought that was really interesting, and it's really cool. So I'm excited to talk about it, and I'm excited to, really kind of run through it, if you will, to inform you guys, all right? Because research is everything, and it's really important to know your research. It's really important to understand what it means, and it's important to be able to then talk about it and, make decisions and choices that you choose for your own children, right? And go about it that way. I think everybody has, opinions and that sort of thing, right, guys? But at the same time, the facts are the facts. And when it comes to, I tell my parents all the time, when it comes to, reading and math, that's where you want to fight, okay? There's other areas too, like speech, especially for, different situations, that sort of thing. And, you're always going to be going back to the table. You're always going to be doing that kind of thing. But, reading has always been that one thing, So this was interesting, and this is meta-analysis, all right? And it's about what science says, and in regards to, of course, the science of reading and the research behind it. When we did the reading series, I went on and on and on. I felt like in reference to the science of reading. But, what needs to be kind of emphasized is the amazing research behind it. It is insane, okay? When I say insane, it is literally insane, okay? Now, let me make sure real quick, over on the page, and then the group, Okay, good. All right, so to start off with, okay, look, my thing's all showing. There we go. Is it good now? All right, so with the science and the meta-analysis, the purpose of meta-analysis, let me just go over that part first so that you guys are on the same page as me. So the first part of meta-analysis is to systematically combine and analyze data. All right, you know me and data. All right, we're like go hand in hand, right? So you're combining and analyzing that data, and that's from published research and studies, so that you and I can better understand, okay, what the body of research says about a particular question, subject, whatever, okay? So in this circumstance, it's the science of reading and Orton Gillingham. And I am certified in Orton Gillingham in direct instruction, and I also have extensive training in the science of reading. And so this was very interesting information. So if your child struggles with reading, these are important things to know. All right, so studies combine results from multiple individual research studies in order to provide a sense of overall strength of intervention. All right, so this is interesting. So the strength of intervention thoughts and effects. All right, when multiple studies are combined and there is potential to better inform, all right, the public, all right, it is important to understand that when there is only one field, okay, and one study, that many times that study is flawed, which is where I have said, you know, Fontes and Pinnell is horrible, the most horrible program in my opinion. And because, you know, it's based off of, anything can be, oh, it's scientifically based, because schools have to have scientifically based research and studies to support the things that they do. Well, the problem is how scientifically based is it? How much is researched? What is looked at? How do I know that it is the best program that's out there? Not that, you know, I expect my child to have the Cadillac. I'm cool with the darn Toyota. All right, I drive a Camry myself. But what I want to know is it a fully embodied program that is going to systematically teach my child? Okay? And so when you have individual research studies, many times they have flaws, okay? And then it causes that great big question mark, right? So we're like, okay, so like I've said, you know, Fontes and Pinnell, it's like a crash and burn, all right? Every time I've seen a child with Fontes and Pinnell, it is literally a crash and burn. And then parents are irate. They don't even understand, you know, many times what DRA is, or a Lexile level. I understand that that is a very hard thing to just know. You know, I didn't know it, that's for sure. And I know that it's something that you're expected to know because they're not going to tell you. And so it's important to understand all aspects of reading, the reading program, what your child's doing, how they're teaching it, what is the first thing that they're teaching, why is comprehension even in goals if your child is not even passing and going through vocabulary and is very proficient in vocabulary. You know, those are the things that really are crazy, okay, to me. So in other words, okay, it's important to understand that, you know, meta-analysis can enable us to find a signal, all right? In other words, so for example, amid the noise, all right, that's out there from people, we want to make sure that studies don't reflect or are associated or are interpreted to have flaws, okay? So that is the first thing, all right? You know, the next part of this is, you know, it's very simply stated, all right, in this research that I pulled up, okay, that, statistical analysis, and this is so like science-based, guys. I know it's freaking boring, but it's important to know. All right, so can't talk. I can't talk. It's Friday. I am so excited. It's Friday. Post a 1 below if it's your first or third time catching me live. Tell me where you're from, all right? And post a 2 below if you're an oldie but goodie, okay? So the next thing is, I'm seeing people post. I don't even see you guys. Hey, Susan, I called you. You didn't answer my call. All right? So we're going to have words. Hey, Erin, how are you? Hi, Stephanie. Hey, Kim, Misty, how are you? How are you? Yeah. Oh, God. Fontes and Pinella, it's like a shit show. Oh, you don't want to get me started. Hi. How are you guys? All right. Hey, Bill. All right, so the next thing is statistical. See, I got the word right. Analysis is due to chance. All right? And practical importance tells us whether that result is meaningful enough to act in some way. For example, recommend an intervention to do more research. All right? So listen to that. All right? So statistical analysis is due to chance. Statistical analysis is due to chance. Statistical analysis is due to chance. Okay? Bam. Schools will use it. It's scientifically based. It was researched. One time. I'm not saying always it's like that, but many times it is. So it's interesting, okay? So we question, right, guys? How many times do we question? We question all the time. What is going on in school? Why is my child not learning? What is going on? How is my child being taught? Who is teaching my child? Are they qualified to be teaching my child? All right, remember I said to you guys, hi Stephanie, how are you? Did I even say hi to you? The thing is y'all better not be on IEP summer break, all right? Y'all need to be looking at your IEPs, making sure that they are on point, okay? If they're not, we have to talk because you want them in place and on point come this coming year, all right? We all may be back in school, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be a mess. All right, and we keep throwing around this compensatory services, all right, and we're gonna have a conversation about that, guys, on Monday. All right, so you're gonna learn really quick that this compensatory service is not as awesome as you think. All right, so you have to understand that part of it. All right, there's pros and there are cons to everything. And so you are going to learn, so stick around Monday, you are going to learn the pros and cons of compensatory services and the person who suffers on the con. Okay? All right, so the next part is practical importance is a way to go beyond, all right, statistical significance, all right, and say something more about the result. All right, so if one time research is done, one time. It could be one person, one time. And then it can be scientifically based. All right, based off, say, 10 people maybe. All right, so it's important to understand what was researched, how was it researched, how many studies are done, how many people did those studies, how many people were within those studies, and what was the success and non-success. So those are the things you want to know. All right. The research team here examined the effects of interventions tested in 16 studies that met their pre-established inclusion criteria. Meta-analysis studies were studies of small groups, okay, Orton Gillingham interventions that only targeted foundational reading skills. The inclusion criteria also required that the population of students in each study had word reading difficulties. They had trouble reading, all right? And then the majority of the interventions studied by the authors were branded as Orton Gillingham, okay? And that is the alphabetic phonics Spartan Reading and Spelling System, Dyslexia Training Program, Foundations. Herman Method Language, if you've heard of that. Linda Mood Bell, Project Assist, Project Read, Recipe for Reading. You also have Slingerland Approach, the Spalding Method, Spire, Starting Over, Take Flight. There's so many. Wilson Reading System, the Writing Road to Reading. Okay, all those are like Orton Gillingham based. Okay, yeah, Linda Mood Bell is too. All right, so I find that very interesting, but it's also very much aligned with the science of reading. So a smaller number were described as being based on OG principles. All right. So authors were branded as OG, and that was what I was just telling you about the programs, all right? Now, in regards to the authors and the meta-analysis estimate was on the OG interventions across these 16 studies. So there were 16 studies done, which is actually pretty significant, all right? And those studies, sorry if my dogs bark, guys, and the extent to which the quality of the research design that was used, all right, in the studies in the year when the studies were published was related to the strength of the effect. All right. So authors and the let's just say this: there were no statistically significant effect of OG interventions that they did that changed anything from what we all know and love about Orton Gillingham. All right, there was only one area of concern, and we're going to get there. All right, so we agree that scientific evidence, okay, presented in this meta-analysis that I'm reading to you, okay, this isn't my information, all right, supports the cautious conclusion. So research does not suggest that Orton Gillingham interventions don't work, all right? What they're more speaking of is as long as OG is supported with the science of reading, which it is, okay? But everything comes down to how it is provided and if it's given in that step-by-step approach, all right? And the I do, you do, we do, all right? That type of approach. Hi, Susan. How are you? Hi, Melissa. Hi, Jessica. How are you? All right. So the one component of Orton Gillingham approaches for which there is less research evidence is kinesthetic and tactile instruction components, all right? And they're often called, listen for it, multisensory, all right? So I'm sure many of you have heard of the multisensory approach, all right? And it's more of a multisensory component, all right? And there's little research, hi, how are you, to suggest this component adds value to the systematic phonics-based instruction, all right? So the multisensory approach is the iffy part, all right? So it's important to understand that when OG is provided, it needs to be given in a step-by-step way. It needs to be given in a way that provides explicit, systematic instruction. And it needs to be delivered by somebody that is certified in either OG or there are certifications in Wilson, which Wilson is not an OG program, but it is aligned with Orton Gillingham and that way in which to teach and that approach. All right. So systematic phonics-based instruction. So is it plausible that the mean effect, all right, size of everything going on, all right, is that approach less evidence than kinesthetic and tactile instructional component? All right, is kind of what it's saying. So that's the confusing part, if that makes sense. It basically says, is it plausible? The one component of OG approaches for which there is less research evidence is that kinesthetic tactile instructional component. So it just basically says there's little research to suggest this component adds value. All right, so that multisensory approach. All right, so it has to be aligned with the science of reading. It has to be taught in a step-by-step way, and it has to be appropriate. All right, so that's really important. And I'll post this for you guys so that you can see it. It's interesting. But I wanted to share it with you so that you had some knowledge on it and understood that, you know, OG is amazing, and then so is the science of reading. But there's no methodology, if you will, to the science of reading. The science of reading is the science of reading. It's a way in which to teach. It is not a program, all right? You shouldn't have to be in a program or do a program to learn to read, all right? There's no program to learn to ride a bike, all right? But, you know, when we're born and everybody, you know, you come out of the womb and you grow up and you start to crawl and you learn to hold your bottle and all these different types of things, the two things you don't know how to do that kids do is ride a bike automatically, and you don't know how to read, all right? But speech is automatic, all right? Speech is within us all and happens automatically to us all. Doesn't mean it has to come out of your mouth, but we all have speech, all right? So it's important to understand that reading has to be taught. How it's taught is the key. And who teaches it is also the key. So it's kind of like, you know, even for children who don't have any disabilities, right? And they're in a class and say their teacher's just not cool. Or maybe they just don't mesh with the teacher, right? Well, that's okay. We don't all mesh with each other. But you're not going to learn the way you should with a teacher you're not meshing with, right? So it's important to have the who be a key component in the decision-making process when you're dealing with a child who has word difficulties and reading difficulties, all right? So there's a need to provide explicit, systematic, evidence-based instruction to students with word-level reading difficulties, all right, as well as to mandate teacher training and the delivery of this type of instruction based on the current evidence, including other meta-analysis cited in this paper that I'm reading to you, okay, this paper, and this research. And basically it says that the systematic and intensive instruction, early word reading, educators can advocate for their school's adoption of reading programs that have these features. They can refer to Stevens' 2021 meta-analysis when making the point that the intervention programs their schools adopt and or use need not be multisensory or branded, unbranded OG programs, okay? So I thought this was really interesting. I liked reading this. It was something that, you know, I love to read about because there is such a huge reading deficit going on today. And, you know, I don't know what's causing it. You know, I know that it's how things are being taught. You know, I know some situations it's who's teaching it. And then the knowledge base, you know, it's not a teacher fault thing because teachers, you know, are not taught a certain methodology, if you will, in ways to read, you know, like that's why ongoing training and different things have to happen with teachers and, you know, anybody else who holds a job that things evolve, you know, things change, things grow, things, you know, just end up not working, and we have to be open to changing it up. Okay, so finally it's important for all of us as researchers, educators, parents, stakeholders, all right, it's very important to really focus and embrace the way in which science is constantly evolving. And it's important to understand that it remains to be seen what large-scale, rigorous research. All right, look, we got the ice cream man. So that's really important. Somebody wants to come on. Rachel. Let's see. Hi, Rachel. How are you? How can I help you? She's on my group. She's wanting to be added. I don't know if she hit it by accident. All right, so she's not adding herself. Okay, so she declined it. So I guess it was a mistake. That's okay. I was going to bring you on and talk to you. I thought you had something to say. So on the group, you can like ask to be part of the video. And, you know, so I was accepting her. And she declined it. So I'm assuming that she pushed it by accident. So yeah, so it's just important to understand that, you know, it remains to be seen whether the multi-sensory structured language phonics instructional approaches add value to the approach that this explicit, systematic, structured language phonics instruction without the multi-sensory component, and how that works. All right, so the science of reading doesn't have that part. All right, where OG does have a multi-sensory approached part, but it's not all multi-sensory. So that's where things are now in question. But OG will 100% switch up the things that they do, how they do it, all that kind of stuff, if it's necessary. But they're hands down, no questions asked. It works. It's amazing. But I found it interesting because I always like to learn more. And if there's a glitch in something, I want to know about it, and I want to know how it can possibly be changed. All right? And I think it's really a good thing. It's not a bad thing to find a difficulty or a hiccup in something. I think that is something that opens all of our eyes, and we're able to then say, okay, so what's going to change? You know, what are we going to, you know, do about this? You know? And that's just where, you know, more training, more instruction, all of that comes into play. I know that most states now, come this new year, have to have their teachers extensively trained in the science of reading. All right? What I'm finding, though, is that that's not happening. You know, I'm mentioning it, you know, in IEP meetings, and I'm watching their face, and I can tell that that instruction, that, you know, extra training is not happening. And teachers aren't saying anything about it because most of the time in IEP meetings they're told not to talk. And, you know, then we have a situation where they're supposed to be trained, you know, by a certain time and date, you know, for, like, let's just say, like California has already picked it up. Texas starts this coming year. So in August, or whenever they start, August or September, that is when all their teachers have to be trained. So at the start of the new year. So that's going to be interesting because you need to find out from your school districts. Okay, you all have to be trained in the science of reading. You all have to be trained on how to explicitly and systematically teach. There's a flow. I will put in on the group the flow of how a child's supposed to be taught in the science of reading flow. All right, I call it a flow. It's not really called the flow by them, but I call it a flow because it literally is a step-by-step approach, as if you're taking one step and then another. All right, if you don't take that one step, unless you're skipping steps, which you can't do with reading, then it's one step and one foot in front of the other until you get to the top. All right? And so that's how explicit and structured reading and systematic reading approach is done. All right? Just like a bike. You know, when we first start and we ride a bike, you know, we're all wobbly. Usually our parents are holding the back of the seat so we don't go flying off the bike and crashing. And, you know, then we learn how to do that balancing act. And then, you know, we learn how to, then our parents usually will let go at that point, and then we still crash because we then have to learn how to steer. You know, so it's like one thing has to happen first for the other even to take place, right? So you have to be able to balance the bike in order to steer it. So, you know, you have to first balance it and then you steer it, you know? And then you learn to do those things put together. And what is that called? Riding a bike. So when you take all of the different areas in which you have to know, all right, your recognition of words, your language knowledge, all right, and then your complete and utter word recognition, which is your comprehension and so forth. When you have all three aspects of reading, then you can read, all right, and comprehend, which is what reading is. All right, so when, you know, I talk to parents and we're going over different things and, you know, they're telling me that their child can read beautifully and, you know, but they're having trouble with comprehension. All right, I get this all the time. All right, kind of makes me laugh and chuckle a little bit because it's funny and cute, but in the grand scheme of things, that's not reading. All right, reading is reading in an explicit way where you are not only recognizing and knowing what those words are and what they mean, but you're reading fluently and understanding every bit of what you read. Okay? And that comes with that step-by-step approach. And that step-by-step approach is very clearly written so that it is simply taught. You yourselves can do it with your kids as well. And it's a very simple approach and is not hard for anybody to learn. All right? So that is how that goes. All right? So 3 of the people that I want to just talk to you about this that did some of the research here is Emily Solari. All right? She has her PhD and is the coordinator and professor in the Reading Education Program in the Department of Curriculum Instruction and Special Education at the University of Virginia. All right? And that is right up the street from me, about an hour. And it's an amazing school. So she's pretty darn cool. And her scholarship focuses on the prevalence and predictors and underlying mechanisms that drive reading development within the goal of developing and testing the efficacy of targeted interventions to prevent and ameliorate reading difficulties. I thought that was interesting. The next person is Yakov Petcher. I think I'm saying it right. And he's an associate professor at Florida State University and associate director at the Florida Center for Reading and Research, and the deputy director of the National Center on Improving Literacy. And his interests are data analysis and just really researching the behind the scenes in regards to reading. And the next person is Colby Hall, and Colby is an assistant professor and reading education in the Department of Curriculum Instruction and Special Education at UVA as well. And she also is part of the Education and Human Development team. And so she actually got her degree and PhD at the University of Texas at Austin. And so her primary role in the development and testing of various reading instructional interventions for elementary and middle school students with or at risk with reading difficulties. Okay? So those are 3 of several people who started doing some of the reading science commentary is what this is called. And it's interesting. It's an interesting read. It's in the Reading League Journal. And I can post it for you guys. So it's pretty good. And I found it really interesting because the more we know about reading, the more we're going to be able to help our kids. All right. That was my daughter's biggest issue, and is quickly has quickly changed. You know, she's now working hitting a 3-year mark when it comes to reading, and she's only been at Linda Mood Bell. It'll be a year this August, and she's just now starting 5th grade, and that's how behind she was. She was so behind, but the way she's made progress is insane. And I just got a progress report today. And then one thing I really like is they go over the progress reports with you, because their progress reports are just like the ones that drive me crazy, where there's, say, like proficient, building, progressing upon, all that kind of stuff, and it drives me nuts. But one thing I like about it is when they give them out, they call you and email you and say, hey, let's set up our call. And then they go through all of it with me, with all the data and all the stuff that I want, and will provide it to me and all of that kind of stuff. So I love that. And I love the fact that, it's kind of funny how they give that first, and it's just this, like, 1 page. This is what she's working on. This is the level. This is what she's working on. This is the level. And when I first saw it, I remember thinking, this isn't going to work for me. But it's fine because of what they do. I mean, every so many weeks, 12 weeks, they will do another assessment. And then they have a conversation. They give the progress report out. They have a conversation with you in reference to the progress report. And it's awesome. So I really like that communication. I like the fact I like to know what's going on. And if there's been times where she's kind of gone back on a couple things because she learned new things that were much harder. So she was learning that, and some other things kind of got left at the wayside for a hot minute. And I love how they talk to me about that, and, the thoroughness of it. So there was no question where you're like, well, what happened? Why didn't you tell me about it? And I like how they just came and said, okay, this is what's going on. She's learned this, 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 and this. So these things kind of are floating, if you will, and have not progressed upon because she's focused on all these new things that she's learning. We're going to, once she's, gotten to some sort of proficiency with this, we're going to go back and hit that again. I love hearing those things. And, it's kind of like I was talking to you guys the other day, and I said, many times it's a good thing if your child is at, say, 70%, proficient in an area in 3rd grade. Yeah, they need to move on to 4th grade, but they still stick in that area to master that 30%. So you're moving on, but you're still hitting this, to get the mastery here and to continue moving on, And so, because sometimes when you move on, it kind of fills in that blank of what was missed here, and it can actually work. So, hopefully this was enlightening for you guys. I know it wasn't like, woohoo, lots of fun. But what I like about it is research is research. You either like it or you don't, but it's something you got to read and you got to know about. And, you cannot beat having the knowledge. All right? And knowing at least what's going on and what can you do about it, and is there anything you can do about it. And there's things that you can say. Hi, Rhonda. How are you? Is it Nassim? I know the D's probably silent, right? Sheila Jepto Nasim, is it? Karina, hello Jessica, Susan McCain, Emmett, Melissa Etchson, um, hello, hi Lindsay, hi Melissa. Okay, cool. I said hi to all y'all. All right, so hopefully I'm on summer IEP break right now because I'm waiting for mine. Yes. Um, Yours is going to be awesome. All right, guys. So I will talk to you soon. Have a good weekend. And we are going to talk about some interesting stuff come next week. And we're going to continue this through the summer. We'll even have a Q&A. And, one thing that I've seen is that there's school systems doing evaluations over this summer because they know that they're going to be crazy overwhelmed come the fall. So don't be afraid to ask for an evaluation if you want one. Make sure you are very clear on what it is you want and what you want that to entail and why. Because, that's where I'm seeing a lot of yucky evaluations is because what's being asked is not what should be asked. All right? So I will talk to you guys soon, and I'm going to be getting some stuff out for you guys and some free stuff and for you guys to look at so that you can, really, I don't have a missed call. I called, yes. Hi, Misty, Wisconsin, huh? All right. I got stuck there once. They got really good cheese, though. All right, guys. Have a really good weekend, okay? I will talk to you soon. Bye. Bye. Pull this off. All right. There we go. All crazy. Oh, oh, okay. I'll call you again, Susan. PNF and Lucy. Okay. Who's Lucy? What's Lucy? You gotta tell me, Missy. What is Lucy? Message me. All right. All right, guys. I'll talk to you soon.